Hello YouTube and hello viewers, and welcome back to yet another episode of creating our community project. I decided not to leave you guys on a limb for the night. I felt a little bad with the video that I just released. It didn't really give much information, so I decided to just throw another one in just to get you started. What we're going to look at in this session is understanding how this is all going to work, because some of you are a little bit confused of how I'm saying we're going to use a web server and we're using databases and we're going to be using Unreal. So I'm going to sort of explain to you how this is going to work and how we're going to get it to all connect to each other so it can all communicate. And what we're going to do is we're going to sort of start setting up the principles of that system working in this session. So remember, if you do get stuck, please do pause the video, catch up, and then continue on. And hopefully you can follow on throughout the whole system, so it shouldn't be too bad. So without further ado, let's get ourselves started. So again, thanks very much for the support. You guys are crazy. I mean, just after I released the last video, you can see how many subscribers I just gained. It was absolutely insane. Thanks for those people that are throwing in your hitting that subscribe button for us. So what I'm quickly going to do is I'm actually going to open up Paint. I'm not the best painter in the world, but I just want to explain to you how this is all going to work. So it makes a little bit of sense to some of you. So let's just check my brush. That seems to be okay. Let's see, raise that out. So basically what's going to be happening is that, let's go back to the brush. So we've got Unreal Engine here. So he's just sitting all by himself, just chilling in the corner. Okay. And what we have up here is going to be our web server. Now remember, I'm not the best drawer with the mouse, so this is the best illustration I can give you right now. Now the web server, if you remember correctly, we downloaded that program called WAMP, which was going to hold our web server and our database. Now the database, so the D, oops, that's a B. Oops, that's definitely not a D. Oh geez, I can't even draw it. What? Here we go. Let's try and erase that. Normally I use a graphics tablet, but I don't have it plugged in, so we've got the database. Now this is the very important part of the system, but the database can talk to the web server and the web server can talk back to the database, which is perfect for us because that's where we're going to store all our information for the end user. And what we're using UE4 for is to actually communicate to the web server and back using that var_rest plugin. And that's why we need that, because we're going to start sending information to the web server for the user to either log in and etc. However, what we're going to do at the web server is we're going to allow users to register onto the web server. So they'll have to go to somewhere like www.mygame.com, then hit the register button, and then they can throw their register information into there, and then that would then get saved into the database. The user won't need to log into the web server, because what we can do is get the user to log in through here, so through the actual game itself. So that's where the var_rest works really well, is because we can get the user to log in through the game itself, speak to the web server, which then speaks to the database, and then returns all that information back to the game, and then it will start working. But before we can do that, we need to obviously set up a few things so we can make sure it's all working correctly. So hopefully this made a little bit of sense of how it's all going to work. Not the best illustration in the world, but hopefully you sort of get the good idea of how this is all going to be working. So where we left off last time is I got you to set up everything. So you downloaded 4.11, you downloaded Notepad++, you downloaded the var_rest plugin, hopefully installed that into the engine, and you also downloaded the WAMP and you received this screen here. So your WAMP section. And we can see that we've got two things running, which is the MySQL database and the Apache web server. Now, what we need to do is we need to actually start creating a kind of sort of web page for this to start working. So if I had to open the application folder, you'll get greeted with this stuff. Don't worry about my naming conventions, it doesn't really matter for now. But you're thinking, Wayne, how do I actually get this to work? I mean, there's so many folders there. Yes, it does get a little bit confusing, but the only thing you really need to worry about is the web server itself. You don't need to worry about the rest of all the stuff. Apart from this, I'd recommend you put that as a shortcut onto your desktop. That way, when you restart your machine, you can quickly open this up and then restart your web server and things like that. Because I don't think so this automatically starts when you switch on your machine. So maybe a good idea to stick that onto the desktop. I'm actually going to do that now. So I'm just going to say send to, and desktop. So that's just going to make me a little desktop icon so I can quickly get to it if needs be. Basically, if you open that, it just opens this again, and we can switch everything on if it doesn't switch on itself. Okay, so let's go onto our web browser, and let's type in our normal IP, which is 127.0.0.1. That's your local, and always just put at the end the dot and your port number that you gave during the installation, and you get greeted with the screen that you see here. Now, basically, this is a default template that Bitnami gives you just to understand a few things about their services. What we want to do is we actually want to remove all this stuff. We don't actually want to see this because we want to start building our own little website, you could say, on this system. Now, to do this, we're going to go back into that folder. We're going to go into Apache. Now, Apache is our web server, so we need to go into this. So you're going to double click. And you don't need to worry about any of these apart from htdocs. And basically, you've got everything here, which you'll see on this website here. So on your local host, what you see in the background here. So I'm actually going to delete all of that because I don't need it. So I'm just going to delete it and remove it all. Now watch what happens if I refresh this page. It should just be blank. And as you can see, it is blank because we've just deleted all the content that was inside that web server. All right. So what we need to do is let's go back into that folder, and we need to start doing some stuff in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new text document. I know it sounds crazy for now. Just press enter. There's no need to do anything else with it, and just open that up. Okay. And all I want you to do is go crocodile teeth body. All right, and close the crocodile teeth. So basically, we're just making a HTML website, really, for now, just so you can see it working. So we're going to just put HTML at the top. Okay, and we got our body tag. We're going to close off the body tag. So if you're not really used to HTML, this is basically the normal sequence that we'll do to make a HTML page. So that basically starts an HTML page, starts the body. So if you think about the body being where all the information goes into, then we stop the body so it doesn't like continue going in a loop. Not that it will, but just so we can stop it running, and then close the HTML tags. Now we're not working a lot with HTML. We will be using a lot of PHP, but you got to start like this all the time. And what we'll do is we'll just do a test. We're going to put H1 for heading 1. It's just a font size, really. I'm just going to say, hello, YouTube, just for an example's sake. And we'll close that off. Everything you start with a tag needs to be closed off with a /. So just a reminder, HTML and close. So you can see the // are closing everything. And we just done this hello YouTube in H1. Now, I did say we're going to use Notepad++, but for this example, we don't really need that, to be honest. So I'm going to go File, Save As. Now, it's not going to be called New Text Document. We're actually going to call this index.html. Now, this is going to disappear later on, but it doesn't matter for now. And we're just going to change all files just so make sure we save it as a .html. Very important that you make this a .html. Okay. Hit the Save button. Okay. Now, what should happen is it should have saved a web file, which is index, into that location. So if I refresh this page, you can see it says, hello, YouTube. Now, this is basic HTML. Obviously, it gets a little bit more complex than that, but it sort of gives you the idea that the web server is working. We can read the files through the server, and obviously, we'll start working our way through that. Now, what we're going to do just to end off the session is something that's very, very important to our system is to name things correctly and make sure that we have the right folders in the right location and files will be going in the right location, etc. So I need you to pay special attention to what I'm about to do next. So inside our htdocs, I want you to do the following. We're going to make a new folder and we're going to call this pages. Because this is going to hold things like the registry page, we can put different pages in there if needs be. The index always stays out of that because that's the first page we want to see. But any other pages we make are going to go into there. The next one I want you to create is a new folder, and we're going to call this DB. And that's going to hold our database information. So really important to have that because we're just going to call that every now and again. through the system, because obviously it needs to be connected and it needs to be working correctly. All right. Once we've got that set up, what we're going to try and do is we're going to set it up so that we can connect to our database, and we're actually going to do a little bit of PHP code here. Okay, so I need you to open up your Notepad++ for this part of the session. So we're going to open up the Notepad++. Okay, so make sure that's open, and you can see that it's a new document. If you haven't got a new document, just go File, New, and then that would make your new document. All right. Now, the coding might get a bit extent, but just bear with me. Remember, if you get stuck, just pause, revisit, and then go through it again. All right. And what we're going to do is we're going to start again with our HTML, and then our body, just like that. All right. Remember, what we did is we closed that off. So close the body, and then we're going to close off the HTML. Oops. So close off. Oh, what is it? HTML, and close that off. Okay, so just like we did before, started the HTML, then had our body, and etc. We're going to put titles and stuff in, but for now, we just want to make sure that we can connect to our database by just writing a very simple PHP script. Now, when we start PHP, it starts like this, just like that. So, crocodile teeth, question mark, and then PHP. Now, for some reason, it's not in color. Maybe we have to just save it. So let's go save as for now. And we want to save into, my stuff is in stuff, Wampshiz, Apache. Make sure you save it into that location. htdocs, database, and I'm going to call this db. And I'm just going to make sure that saves as a .php file, if I can find it in all this mess. So where is it? Is there a PHP? There we go. PHP. So I'm going to save as a PHP file. And say save. There we go. Now we can see the colors. Makes things a little bit more easier when we can see colors. Alright? So, what we're going to do now, and what normally happens when we do PHP, everything sort of saves in variables, and we call the variables when we need them, and it does get a bit confusing, but hopefully I do explain it as much as I can through our process. So we're going to make a variable. And to make the variable, it's going to be the $sign, so $, and we're going to call this server name. Right, so server name. So basically, we can call this whatever we like. It doesn't have to be called server name, but it just makes a little bit more sense if we called it server name. And we're going to open up the quotation marks, and we're going to say local, so local host. Now, remember, our database is connecting on localhost, so on our machine. Obviously, if you had a web server, it'll be exactly the same. If you're trying to connect to an IP that was not on your web host and you wanted to connect to that, then obviously you'd have to put the IP and etc. into that to connect to the database. But because we're using WAMP, we'll keep it local. If you had a host yourself, it would still be local. Our next one we need to do is get our username for our database. So username, and that's going to equal. Remember, that was root. Right, so I'm going to close it off with a semicolon. Right, so that was the root. That was the username. Now, obviously, you're going to see the password for my database. It's not the best password in the world because we're doing it for YouTube. So I called it YouTube. Makes perfect sense to me. Okay. So basically, we're just storing text into these variables because we then need to connect to our database. Okay. So let's make a comment so we know what we're working with. So the next one we're going to do is make a connection. Now this doesn't do anything. This is just a comment. Oops. No, we don't want to make connection underscore aborted. All right. So make a connection. So basically, this is just going to make a connection to our database so we can connect to it. Now we need to make another variable, and we can call this connection, or let's just call it con. A little bit more easier to call it con. I'm going to say equals new MySQLi, because we're going to use MySQLi, a little bit more safer, I suppose. If we're using varS, we're going to use that one. Open and close brackets, and we're going to have $server name. So server name. Okay, so we're going to connect to our MySQL, so our database, using our server name, comma, then obviously our username. So our username. So our username, comma, and also then using our password. All right, so it's going to use all these 3 strings to try and connect to our MySQL connection, so to our database. All right, so now we just need to check to see if it is connected. So let's just put more comments so you know what each one does. So we're just going to check the connection to see if it actually works. All right, so we're just going to check to see if it's working. Now, how we do this is we're going to use what they know as an if statement. So we're going to say, if something is true, then do this. If it's not, then it's false. Okay, so we're going to say if, right? So if, and as you probably imagine, we want to see if this connection here, right? So is this connection, is it connected, right? Or is it not connected? That's probably the best one for us to test. So we can say $con, so $con is this, all right? So that, so, and we want to check if there's a connection _error. All right, so we want to see if there's a connection error. All right, so $con, and if there is a connection error, actually, let's remove these spaces. Let's take these out. Oops. Oh my God, Wayne, what's going on? Let's take those spaces out. So if there is a error connection, we want to open up curly brackets. All right, so we want to open up the curly brackets. Watch out for these bad boys. They could become a little bit of a pain, so make sure you do open up that curly bracket. Just press a few enter spaces down so we can move it down. Okay, so if there is no connection, we're going to say die, right? So basically just kill the connection, and we need to say why it can't connect. So we're going to say connection failed, right? So connection failed, and then we're going to stick a string together with another piece of information, and we're going to say $con, so con, all right? And we're going to say, okay, what was the error? So we can actually get the connection error. So we can actually work out what the actual error is. So we're going to say connection failed, and then it will tell me what the error was, if there was one. Now don't forget semicolons. They could become a real pain in the backside too, if you don't watch out for them. All right. Now that's just the if statement saying, okay, well, if that's true, then do that. But we need a false statement underneath the curly bracket. Okay, so obviously if it's worked correctly, we can say echo. Now, if you don't know what echo is, echo basically prints out onto the screen what we want to see. Okay, so what we want to see is it wants to say connection success, which basically means we are successful and it does work for us. Now we need to close off our PHP because that's all completed. And there we go. So we've got our PHP little bit of script here. So we did a variable that will hold the local host, so where we're connecting to, our username, which is root, and our password, which is YouTube. Obviously, yours will be different depending on your password. These two will be the same, but your password will be different. That's what you chose when you set it up. Or if you're on a web host, your username might be different. So just watch out for those. Then we just had to make a connection. So we made a variable called con, and then we were saying, okay, we're going to make a new SQL connection. And we want to connect by using this server name, this username, and that password. And then we were checking to see if there was any errors. If there was, then fail it completely and tell us what the error is. Otherwise, if it works fine, then say successful. So let's save that. So save. Now, if you remember correctly, that's now been saved into this DB folder. So db.php. So let's open up our web browser, which we're on 127.0.0.1, then 70 port, and put /db. And you'll get a list of directories that's inside this DB folder. We're actually going to set it up so no one can see this, but for testing purposes, we'll just keep it open for us to look at for now. So click on db.php, and hopefully it would say connection successful, which means we're actually connected now into the database. And that's good because now if we connect to the database, we can start grabbing information and stuff from that if we need to do so. But before we even start grabbing information, we need to set up our database by putting tables and all sorts of other things into that. So hopefully this was a little bit of a input to what it's going to be like to creating this login system. Hopefully you you stuck with it. I know it's a lot to take in. If you're not a coder, it is difficult to understand. But hopefully you sort of captured the information and it worked for you. Just remember, be very careful of these curly brackets. They could be a little bit of a pain. Don't put this inside the curly because that won't work, because this is basically the true. So in between those brackets, it's the true statement. And then obviously if it wasn't true, then we'll just print this out here. Okay, and watch out for these semicolons. They're not commas, they're actually semicolons. So just be careful of those. Very important to watch out for. And then obviously you can call your variables, so anything that's got a dollar in front of it, you can call them whatever you like for your system. That's fine. And then all these forward slashes are just comments, just to help you, I suppose, in whatever you're working with. So we could save that again just to make sure we don't lose that. And then all we did is we went into our web browser and we just, on our 127.0.0.1, then our port number, we just put /db, which was the folder location. So this folder here, so db, and it shows us this db.php. If we click on that, then obviously it'd say connection success, because it was a successful connection into our database. That's a very important part. So hopefully you guys can get that right. We won't need to write that again if you have got it right. So hopefully, yeah, you get it done first time, hopefully. So thank you very much for joining me for this session. As I say, I thought I'd throw you another one just to keep you going for the evening. Try and get that working if you can. If not, just leave a comment in the section and I can try and help you if you are coming across any problems. Again, thank you very much. My name's Wayne. It was nice taking you for this session. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. And if you really like the channel, why not drop a dono? Thanks very much. It was nice taking you. Goodbye, and I'll see you in the next one.